public, our July 16th, 8 o'clock briefing. And Mr. Bell, you'll have invocation today for us?
Yes, I have somebody.
Okay.
Matter of fact, the health director's gonna do it.
All right. Mr. Mayo, you'll lead us in the pledge. Then we had approval minutes discussion. Mr. Honeycutt, anything for discussion or adjustment of the agenda?
No, sir.
Do any commissioner have anything to add? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I do want to let you know that I've gotten several calls in regards to this rezoning that's coming up, where there are other properties along there that also are affected like that. So probably going to ask that we refer that over to the planning board to review it for those properties to see whether or not we need to make some adjustments for those properties as well.
People have not applied for a zoning change. They've contacted the planner, but they have not actually applied.
So each one I would have to apply for?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, good enough then. Then I won't bring that up.
Okay. Mr. Honeycutt, you want to go through the special presentations?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, we do have a presentation, a certificate to our finance department. This is an award from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States for our 23 years of winning the CAFRA award. So we'll have finance here. Very impressive to have 23 straight years. Next, number 2 is presentation for Friends of Seymour by Jimmy Edmondson. The board will remember when we were talking about funding for the Friends of Seymour, those questions about what they're actually doing. So Jimmy will be here to give an update on what the Friends of Seymour have been up to. Number 3 will be an update from East Point by CEO Sarah Stout. We also have a resolution in our agenda packet that we will ask for approval as well, talking about changes going on at the state level with respect to mental health and how it's being looked after between public and private. Then number 3, Donna Phillips would be here. Donna, this was at the request of Commissioner Mayo. Donna will go over the library's summer learning program. So she'll make that presentation. Then we'll also have David Harris here, who will update us on the HMGP buyouts. As you're aware, we've had some questions from citizens and about concerns, so we felt like it was a good time to bring Dave in to talk about where we're at in the process. And then number 6, we have a motion to approve the Purple Heart Day proclamation. The board is aware we have August 3rd, I believe, which is a Saturday. The banquet for the Purple Heart will be at the Maxwell Center.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If that were from the Patriots Coalition comes today, I'll be glad to read that proclamation.
Okay.
And I'll make sure to get this to you.
It's in the, it's in there.
Oh, yes.
I hadn't heard from Bill or anybody over there, so.
Okay. And that's special presentations.
So then we'll do public comments. Commissioner Aycock, the appointment committee have any?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay. Then we have a 9:15 public hearing on the EMS ordinance.
Yes, sir. At that time, there is a memo within your packet talking about the need for looking at franchising, and I'll be glad to go over that memo before the public hearing.
And then our 9:30 public hearing on the rezoning request.
And Barry's here.
We did have a public hearing today at 9:30 for a rezoning for 2 acres on Highway 70 East from community shopping to RA20. We have advertised for this hearing. We have put it in the newspaper, posted the property, and sent notices to adjacent property owners. And from what I understand, I believe the applicant will have someone here representing them as well. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
This whole thing has all of a sudden come to light. I don't know why, after 20 years, that there would it's just recently come to light in regards to the financing of the residential homes
Right.
that are in fact now zoned and have been zoned as community shopping. And they're having problems actually getting mortgages. So as you're looking at that map going back up toward Goldsboro, there are a number of homes along that stretch that I would imagine also are affected by this. But from my understanding, do you think it might not be a bad idea that we at least notify them that they have the option of requesting a change of zone? Or just wait until it happens?
Honestly, well, we have sent notices to the adjacent property owners, so I know the one to the left or to the west will get a notice regardless of this hearing. And I think this hearing that's taking place today is what has spurred the conversation with someone further to the west that also owns property. So there's conversation in that community right there about the zoning of the property. We could send a notice to them, just advise them that the property is commercial, and that if they are interested in rezoning, they need to petition.
Well,
but,
the
you know,
other issue that comes up is taxing,
Right.
I think, because I think it's being taxed as commercial property when in fact its use is residential.
Right. And
Present use tax.
it's the present.
Do what now?
It's taxed as present use.
Okay.
Which is residential.
All right, so that's not an issue. So somebody brought that up, and so you're saying it's present use, so if it's residential, it's taxed as residential?
That's correct.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know. It's just an issue right there.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Barry, did someone from Georgia Pacific call and
Yes.
talk to you or Chip?
I have talked to them. Yes,
You
sir.
talked to that group?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They're wanting to rezone.
Right. They're going to be, they'll be submitting an application in the near future. That's right.
He saw my name as the commissioner for that district, and I gave him a broad overview. But I just told him to get in contact with you all.
We're working through that one, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Barry. Now, consent agenda, Mr. Honeycutt.
First is applications for elderly or disabled, and we have gone through those, and they look fine. Should not be any, but if there's any questions, let us know. Then applications for disabled veteran exclusion. Again, we have reviewed those, and they are correct. Application for present use value. Working with Alan, everything looks correct on that as well. And then we have budget amendments, and I'll turn that over to our 23-year department head, Kappa.
Take credit for all of
Yeah,
it. First budget amendment is for the staff attorney's office. They are requesting to anticipate and appropriate an additional $27,200. And I also will mention that these first few budget amendments are still from our 18-19 fiscal year. So you'll see the budget amendment numbers a little bit out of whack this time. But they over collected for the year, and so we are appropriating additional funds to pay those bills out. For the sheriff's office, we're requesting to reallocate $27,853 for repairs and maintenance of vehicles. There were some additional fleet management invoices billed out at the end of the year, and they did have a budget shortfall in that line item. For the detention center, requesting to reallocate $13,190 from inmate clothing to inmate meals. There were a couple of bills that came in from the prior year that had not been received, and we did find out that those were owed, so we needed to appropriate funds to pay those. For the sheriff's office, we're requesting to reappropriate $11,000 from his non-capital seized property line item to his seized property training line item. This is to send an employee to flight school. I think he's partially certified, and this will complete his certification. He will be able to fly the helicopter. For the fire districts, as there's about 3 pages behind that budget amendment because it looks blank. As you know, at the end of each year, we have to pay out whatever we collected to the fire districts. And in this case, we had, as we did with the county, we overcollected sales tax, and so all the fire districts, or most of them anyway, also overcollected in sales tax. So we had to appropriate the additional revenues they collected in order to pay that out through the end of the year. So now I'm on page 68, and this begins the New Year's budget amendments. You'll see number 1 at the top. For the Health Department, we're requesting to anticipate and appropriate an $80,000 grant for the Sexual Health Initiatives for Teens grant. This is a grant-funded position. It's 100% grant-funded. They will be housed at the Southern Wayne High School Wish Center, and it will be limited to the duration of the grant period. That position will. For facilities, we're requesting to, excuse me, I lost my train of thought, appropriate additional $10,410. This is for the hiring of a position for a qualified employee that was, it's electrician that was hired and over and above what the minimum threshold was for that salary position. For the Health Department, you'll see something very similar. I'm on number 3. They had an employee hired that was above the qualifications of that position, so they're requesting additional salaries for that position. For EMS, we are requesting to appropriate $27,405 in the EMS fund balance, not general fund, and this will be to pay for the furnishings on EMS stations 7 and 9. The next several, starting on page 72 and going through page 79, these are all reappropriations. As you know, at the beginning of a fiscal year, if there were funds that carried over from one year to the next, either through grants or projects that were not completed at June 30, we have to carry those funds over from one year to the next. We call these reappropriations, and that grouping of budget amendments are all reappropriations of prior year expenditures that had been authorized.
So just as a point on, I think it's number 6 here.
Yes, sir.
In regards to the capital outlay on equipment of $30,000 for the purchase of a dishwasher, we had already agreed to that in a prior.
That was part of the 18-19 fiscal year budget.
Okay.
And we're
So you're
still
just
trying
carrying it
Yes,
over?
sir.
Okay.
And I think they actually had not planned to purchase it, but it's actually just died. So they ended up having to buy it after all, so. So now I'm on page 80, if there's no other questions about all those reappropriations in your agenda packet. And this is for the Health Department. They have received a decrease in funding on one of their grants. It's the Healthy Communities Program. With several of these grants, they find out after the budget's been approved that a budget has been increased or decreased for certain programs. For the EMS department, you will see earnings appropriated of $4,473 and being allocated to a professional services collection fee. We have the Medicaid cost recovery program, and that's that payout we get once a year in the Health Department and EMS for the Medicaid charges. But we also have to pay the NCACC for conducting that program. So their fee is based on whatever percentage we get back, and there wasn't quite enough budgeted for that amount. For the Health Department, the Breast and Cervical Cancer Control Program, they did receive an additional $9,100 in state funding after the original budget was passed. That is to anticipate and appropriate those funds. We have another one for the Health Department. This is my final budget amendment. They received a decrease in the breastfeeding peer counseling program in the amount of $2,429, so they are decreasing that program supply line item accordingly. Do you have any questions on those? I know that was quite a few. Thank you.
Then next, under consent agenda is number 5, motion to approve road addition petition for East Lake Drive, Driftwood Drive, and Clearwater Court in the East Lake subdivision as requested by the NCDOT. Very standard resolution and request. Number 6, motion to approve the final subdivision plat for Gander Lake, Phase 5, as recommended by the Wayne County Planning Board. And I'll turn that to Barry.
All right, Gander Lake Phase 5 is a final subdivision plat. This is for 22 lots, located on a little over 10 acres. This is out on Pikeville Princeton Road, right there near the Johnston County line, if you're familiar with that area. There are, of course, several phases that have been developed out there, and of course, this is just one additional phase that's going in that subdivision. We do have all the required documentation. We do have the built to standards letter from DOT, and also the planning board has reviewed this request and is recommending approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just have a comment. We've been, that part of the county, which is in my district, for years has been the hot spot, one of the hot spots of the county as far as development. And I'm just making a statement here. My concern is that, yes, we are approving a lot of subdivisions across the county, but in that particular area, I'm real concerned about where kids are going to go to school and how crowded it's going to be. It really needs to be addressed at some point, because 22 lots, there are going to be some tricycles and bicycles in some of these homes. There's going to be some children. And in the position that we are now in the northern part of Wayne County, the northwest part, I'm real concerned. And of course, we don't have a right to stop somebody from using their property to its best use. But we need to start looking and planning ahead, because these subdivisions are still popping up, once a quarter or maybe more often for that part of the county. Thank you.
Barry, how many more phases is in Gander Lake? Do you know?
There's
Several?
Several more phases. This phase puts it just a little over halfway done.
Okay.
So I think it was 200, lower 200s, I believe is what was approved. And I think they're at 100 and maybe around 110 is what they've done so far. So they're a little over halfway.
Listen, before you go on, I'm curious about my colleagues. Are you concerned about overpopulation? I'm wondering what was the essence of what your concern is. Is it
That's right.
traffic in the street or?
Classrooms for their students, because as of right now, we still have 13, 14 mobile home classrooms at Northwest. And that's where those kids, a lot of those kids are going to be going. So even if you do redistricting, it's still going to be a crowded issue. So the only thing I can surmise is that there's going to be more and more mobile home classrooms. And I'm just saying, we're already behind as far as taking care of these. The schools and facilities need to keep up with the growth of the population, no matter what area the county is in.
And this is a question, Barry. While there are a lot of development going on there, is it exceeding by a large measure the other parts of the county? Because we're talking about I think he was getting the classrooms and all that, which of course you can't control where people are going to move.
Yeah, I would say so. We have, in the past 9 years, there's been about 1,800 site-built homes built in this county as a whole. And most of those have centered in an arc, basically from Rosewood, looping around the northern part of Goldsboro, and on down back around towards Walnut Creek. So you kind of an arc there. And so it does center around that northwestern part of the county, northern, and then kind of that northeastern part of the county there is where that concentration of site-built homes have gone. And again, like I said, that's 1,800 just in site-built. The schools have a demographic study, I think you've seen that, and it's interesting to see in that study that they're showing very little growth in some of these areas, in some of the schools over the next 9 to 10 years. But just for the record, there have been at least 1,800 site-built alone homes in this county, so.
And also, Mr. Mayor, this is not the only subdivisions up there. I mean, there's another one fixing to expand right behind Northwest School.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is just part of the problem. I mean, and
Well, the study that's being done, I'm just wondering how credible it is, because when you go and put the tires on the highway and you go look and physically see what's going on, it doesn't line up with what the school board study says. It doesn't line up, does it, Mr. Aycock?
no.
And that follows with one more question, Mr. Banish. Who's representing the Board of Commissioners on that realignment?
Commissioner Daughtry, Barry is also attending those meetings, and also Chip.
Okay. That was my concern, because I'm of the belief that someone who is able to share what the information that you have, so that in the end of the day, there won't be any surprises about where the population is. And one follow-up, are we still assuming that the new houses are being filled by people who are moving within the county rather than a lot of exterior people coming in? Is it internal movement like that?
There is some, but there's quite a bit from out of the county moving in.
Yeah.
You could attribute 20 years ago, quite a few folks moving within the county from one place to another. But at some point, you have to look at an adjustment there. You don't have so many people moving from one spot, internal to external or external to internal. So a lot of these folks, when you just go to Gander Lake, for example, or, you see a lot of, I went by there the other day, and you see Johnston County deputies, you see, I think there was a town of Smithfield vehicle in there as well. So you're seeing folks from out of county moving in there, and a lot of it is our tax rates are much lower than some of our neighboring counties to the west.
Right.
As well. So you can buy a house just inside of Wayne County now for a much better value, and still be within decent commuting distance from Johnston County, parts of eastern Wake County, and some of those areas.
So without you knowing exactly, would you guess that the people are moving in or beyond the childbearing stage, or, I meet people sometimes who clearly have come from the north, and they say escaping the cold weather, the rust belt on there.
That's hard to say, but based on what I've seen when I go into these subdivisions, there's quite a few families in there.
And keep in mind, this particular subdivision, the western boundary of the subdivision is the county line.
That's correct.
Like it or not, we're a bedroom for Johnson and Wake County now.
Yep. And when Highway 70 bypass opened, that opened the floodgates, because you can be in Clayton, in 20 minutes or so, with 70 bypass. So, but the key is that just because these people work outside of the county, unless they go to a private school or homeschooling, most of those kids are going to end up going to our schools in Wayne County. So that issue still, as far as the schools and classrooms, still applies.
One last thing, if there's a lack of commercial enterprise out that way, those folks will be spending their money in Johnston County. I mean, on a daily basis.
Right.
So while we're having to educate their children, the taxes, the sales tax, maybe, I'm questionable, I guess, a lot of it be spent left in Johnston County.
Could be, yeah.
So does, don't want to start a firestorm, but that should suggest there might be a surcharge put out that way. So
You'd have to do it for Fremont, because a lot of people in Fremont shop in Wilson. You know, so you don't want to get into that.
that was just
All right, number seven.
shot across the back.
Number seven.
Number 7, okay. Next is a motion to approve the Home and Community Care Block Grant for older adults. This is an annual grant that we do, community block grant that we work through DSS and Council on Aging. Number 8, motion to approve the sale of surplus property at 914 South Goldsboro Street, Fremont, as requested by the town of Fremont. And as you've seen, we've had a request to sell some surplus property and for $4,000, and it's been requested by the town. So number 9, resolution to approve the grant application for the North Carolina's Governor's Highway Safety Program from Wayne County Sheriff's Office. And again, this is a continuation of a grant that we have received over the past 5 years. So this is our DWI.
Mr. Chairman, he's moving right along here. Let me go back to this property in Fremont.
Yes, sir.
Is that jointly owned with
Yes,
the county?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah, I want to ask a question on that, the grant for the safety program.
Yes, sir.
And if you look at page 118, the difference from near the bottom there, the DWI citations and all that, it looks like, maybe I read it wrong when I looked at it yesterday. It looks pretty consistent, I guess, if you look at it all the way across. I looked at it wrong yesterday. Forget it. I was going to ask why things went down. You saw that the speed citations in 2017 were like over 3,000 as opposed to 885. Maybe I didn't look at it wrong.
No, that's a dramatic decrease.
It
That's
is.
for sure. From 17 to 18. Also, same thing with occupant protection citation. What in the world is that?
Is that seatbelts?
Seatbelt.
Oh, really? Okay.
People, you know people like that, don't you?
Do what now? What'd you say?
You know people like that, don't you?
I do.
I'm just curious the difference now, why there was such a dramatic change in 1 year.
That I'm not sure. They do come and give us an annual update, and we can ask those questions.
Or maybe the word's out that the sheriff's department's out there doing the job.
That may be true. Yes, sir.
I hope that's the answer.
Yes, sir.
Is that it? I knew it.
Number 10 is motion to approve final subdivision plan for Fieldstone Village, Section 2, as recommended by the planning board. And Barry?
Fieldstone Village, Section 2, this is a final plat, just as the previous one. This is for 41 lots on 24.6 acres. It's at the intersection of Stony Creek Church Road and Combs Road. The existing phase is directly on Stony Creek Church Road. This new phase is kind of behind there. There will be another access that goes into Combs Road. So we'll open up to a second access for residents in that subdivision. We do have the required documentation. We do have the built to standards letter from DOT. The planning board has reviewed this and does recommend approval. And also, not to bring this back up again, it is in that same area, northern part of the county, where the growth is. But I did want to mention that the group that you were referencing with looking at the schools in the county, they are looking at ways to alleviate some of the overcrowding in those northern elementary schools. So I did want to say that there is some potential there for some help in those areas with those northern elementary schools. So I didn't want to leave you thinking that there was no discussions about the overcrowded in the north, and there has been. So, but with that said, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Basically, what you just said was they're spending money for a study for something that we already know.
Right. Potentially, yes.
That's another prime example of what we were just talking about. But in this particular subdivision, CB Aycott, Noel Wayne, and Northeast are involved.
Right.
The previous subdivision, was Northwest.
Right.
And so, but here's the other thing. Noel Wayne is also becoming overcrowded, even though that school was added on to years back. It's getting to the point that it's overcrowded.
Right, it is, that's
So-
right.
So my point again is that we're going to wait until we got 20 or 25, the most unsafe thing on the school campuses today in Wayne County are mobile home classrooms, bar none. It's the most unsafe from a security standpoint, from the student standpoint. Something needs to be done, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Thank you.
Okay, number 11 is motion to approve final subdivision plat, Willow Pond, Section 2, as recommended by the planning board.
All right, this is as mentioned, a final plat for Willow Pond. This is for 53 lots on about 33 acres. This is right off of South Beston Road, just, about a mile south of Highway 70. We do have, again, with this one, the required documentation, we do have the built-to standards letter from DOT. Planning Board has reviewed this and does recommend approval. And I'd be glad to answer any questions about this one as well.
Any questions? Okay. Next is number 12, motion to adopt resolution 2019-21, resolution adopting the 28th pay plan or amendment to the position classification and pay plan for Wayne County. Again, as part of the budget process, we added we're changing the ranges with respect to our pay positions because we did a 1% COLA. Also, some of the positions got to the max with respect to their positions, so we had to increase their range, and also there was a couple of reclassifications within the budget.
Mr. Manager,
Yes, sir.
a short explanation to that is that these employees are getting a raise.
Yes, sir. And reclassification, we changed some within the budget as part of their job description, so we did reclassify a couple of positions as well.
Meaning that the job needs to be paid more
Yes.
than what it was being paid.
Yes, sir. Or it put, with the increase, it put them out of their current range. So, okay. The number 13, motion to adopt resolution 2019-22, resolution to amend the Wayne County personnel policy. And again, this is just a resolution looking at the positions that we have. Then number 14, motion to approve the short-term interfund loan for June 30th, 2019. And no, I'm sorry. Let me go back to, I apologize. I read number 2, or the last one twice. I'm sorry. The motion to adopt resolution 2019-22, resolution to amend the Wayne County personnel policy. Basically, this clarifies what we consider to be included as far as sick and vacation that is required under the retirement system. So right now, we want, because if you're a current employee, you can retire under the retirement system based upon vacation and sick. And we just want to make sure that we clarified what that was that an employee could use with respect to including that in their total time for retirement. So again, I apologize, I read that twice.
So nothing really changed?
Nothing really, just clarification. Yes, sir. And again, I apologize about that. I sounded confused myself. But number 14, let me see what, Allison, if you wanted to talk about the CDBG.
Yes, sir. So Fund 266 is what accounts for our CDBG disaster recovery grant monies. And those monies are spent first and then reimbursed. And at June 30, we had spent more than we had received at that point. So that fund is in the negative. That can create an audit finding. So we would like to issue the fund a short-term loan from our general fund, and then we will repay that once the new year opens up. We've done these before, but it does require board approval. Are there any questions about this one?
And again, as the board's aware, we'll be seeking financing for some projects with respect to like the radios and the software. So any funds that we expend before that, we'll reimburse ourselves.
Well, this is separate from that. This is, that's the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is
I'm jumping.
the one, this is for the interfund loan for the CDBG grant funds. So, it'll just reverse itself once the new year opens up and we receive enough monies to reimburse those grant funds. But I can move on to the next one if you want me to.
I'm sorry, I got flustered and I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry.
But the next one does relate to that financing. It is the resolution for reimbursement of expenditures from a debt financing of county projects. So we've done this before when we are anticipating going out and borrowing money. It takes a lot to get those projects timed just right. So what we are allowed to do is you are allowed to pass a resolution that gives us the authorization to spend those monies to buy the equipment or whatever it is we're going to do, pay for it from county funds, and then once the timing works out for us to be able to borrow the money, we will reimburse ourselves from those loan proceeds. Your reimbursement resolution has a summary of a breakdown of the projects that are to be included. It is a high-level summary because it gives us flexibility in case there's anything that needs to be added or changed from here until the time that we actually borrow the funds. I will say that the dollars that are listed in this project, it's under Section D, are probably a little bit inflated, only because in case there are any change orders or things like that, we want to make sure we give ourselves the flexibility to reimburse up to that amount. So in Section D, you will see, and this is very similar to what was presented in the budget, we have a Board of Elections project at $350,000. We have an emergency management project, which includes a host of things, towers, radios, things like that, at $3.5 million. I don't expect it's going to cost that much, but again, we wanted to give ourselves the flexibility. $1.4 million for the administration project, which is the software project for finance and planning, and then $2 million is for the Department of Social Services project, which is your renovation of the Dixie Trail facility. So that is what this resolution would allow us to do. Are there any questions on that?
Move on.
I have one question. We are expecting some dollars to come back from this tower that we're building. We tried to get some money from the state. Is that correct?
We're still trying. I don't know if we'll be able to, but we are still trying on that. Yes, sir.
Does it look good, Chip? You know. Okay.
But we are. And again, I apologize. There's so many I got confused on this, so did not mean to jump ahead. New business, motion to approve voting delegate for the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Annual Conference in Guilford County.
Yeah.
The county manager's comment.
That's going to be the chair.
Craig.
I promise I won't be confused then, so.
You'll essentially be at home anyway.
No, this is my home. County Commissioner Manager's comments, Board of Commissioners comments, closed session, and then adjournment.
If you don't mind, I'd like to remind the board that Each one of you are registered for the conference, which is August 21st is when it starts, and your rooms are booked. So let me know now. Well, there are a couple of exceptions, but those of you that stated, which I believe is the majority of you, so if you believe now that there'll be some conflict, let me know so that we can cancel that ahead of time. Just check your schedules, please.
Do we need to go to closed session?
Yes, sir. To discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of businesses in Wayne County and to consult with your attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege.
Have a motion to go to closed session.
So moved.
All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.